Good evening. You have read newspapers. What is the WPI rate of inflation? Minus 3 point. That means there is deflation, negative. It's a negative. I told you it will be 10th and 15th. You get both the figures. So obviously, if you have read, you must have read manufactured products, global commodity prices, all these, and even primary food articles, manufactured, everything. So any doubts that you have? No doubt. Yes. Oh, that is that we will do when we take consequences. I have given you one subhead, consequences. Just see. There I'll tell you. I told you. No, both. We are measuring it also as compared to what it was last year, also what it was the last month, because it is being compiled on a monthly basis. 4.5% is monthly. I told you. Then I explained to you also. I said change in the index value upon previous year's index in 200. That you can work out. So where did we finish? Tell me. Demand pull, we have finished. No, have we finished demand pull? Okay, that means we have to start cost push. So again, right, first let's take a look at what are the cost push factors. I'll give you one by one, then we'll discuss. So before I give you one by one factors, I think I have already told you cost push factors would be those due to which there may either be a shortfall in supply and or increase in cost of production. I told you very clearly. So you have to keep that in mind. So number one, you have to list factors first. Number one, uncertain weather conditions. Uncertain weather conditions. Number two, uncertain weather conditions. Number two, infrastructural bottlenecks. Infrastructural bottlenecks. Bottlenecks means shortages. Your English should be good. Number three, high indirect taxes. Number four, rising wages and incomes. Number five, increase in administered prices. Increase in administered prices. Number six, depreciation of the rupee. Number seven, global inflation. Number 8. Hoarding, 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 speculation, and black marketing. Number 9, high fiscal deficit. Okay, shall we start? First one, who can explain? That's the simplest one. Do we? My dear, we often say Indian agriculture is a gamble in the monsoon. Do we say it? What does it mean? That 70% of Indian agriculture is dry land farming. You don't have assured irrigation facilities. Bad weather means crops are gone, shortages take place, and it starts raising the cost. Very simple. Number 2, who can explain this? If somebody asks me of these factors, point out 2 or 3 which are very prominent. First factor I would point out this. Transportation. Anything else? Anything else? I ask you a question. Is regular power supply infrastructure? You are running a factory. You are not getting regular power supply. It is erratic power. Correct? You are not able to use your full capacity. Yes or no? It is underutilization of capacity, which means per unit cost is going up. That is one example of poor infrastructure. I ask you a question. Do we have regular power supply in India? Don't look at Delhi. Yeah. Why remote? Even in smaller towns, go and ask. This is one infrastructure. The second infrastructure. Do you have good connectivity and roads? No. Each delay in the connectivity results in rising costs, because time is money. 3, do you have good, efficient transport system? No. Right? Because each of these are very important infrastructural facilities. And unfortunately, India has very poor infrastructure. Add to it the fact that, as somebody pointed out, warehousing facilities. Tons and tons of your wheat and other stocks, they rot in the open. I think you know it. Go and ask Food Corporation of India people. Each of these are called infrastructural bottlenecks and shortages. They all result in rising costs, both of production and distribution. So this is if somebody were to ask me, point out 2 or 3 very important factors in India resulting in supply shortages and increase in costs, my answer would be this may be on top. Infrastructural shortages. Next. I ask you a question. Give me a good example of high indirect taxes. Petroleum products. Whenever prices of, now we are a very poor country, bad country in certain respects. Otherwise, if you ask a common man, he says there isn't a country better than India, because he can do anything on the road. You understand? No law and order, enjoy. Okay. What were we discussing? High indirect tax. I think you know, global oil prices today are low. Has there been a fall in the prices of petrol or diesel? No. When global prices rise, you raise prices of fuel. When they fall, you don't. Why? Because when they rise, it seems that oil marketing companies, Indian Oil Corporation, ONCG, they are subsidized by the government. So when prices fall, they are covering those subsidies. It came in newspapers also. For a long time, global oil prices are low, but there has not been any change in either petrol or diesel prices. And when you talk of high indirect taxes, you point out fuel as a prominent item, apart from other items where excise duties may be raised, GST rates may be raised, right? Perhaps you know that I think when we were discussing GST, I told you that you have 4 rates in GST, no country has 4 rates. Then if you remember, I would have told you that 12 and 18, we have been listening, reading for a long time that they are to be merged into 16. This has not been done. So indirect taxes are commodity taxes. And as and when they are raised, it directly impacts the price level. Next. Wages are both on the demand side as well as on the cost side. Because rising wages are a cost to the producer. He has to cover that cost by passing it on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Next. Who can explain this? Yes. Excellent. Are you an economic student? Very good. Non-economic student answering the question. You must appreciate. But your friends have not understood. Elaborate, they have not understood. MSP. First, tell your friends what are administered prices. Prices of goods and services which are arbitrarily fixed by the government. It could be railway tariffs, it could be railway freights, it could be electricity tariffs, it could be MSP. Whenever government raises prices of goods and services, these are called administered prices. They are administered irrespective of demand and supply. So the market gets a signal that if government has raised prices, it will also start raising prices. In fact, you won't believe, up to 1991, when there was everything was mostly determined by government. There was hardly any private sector, right? We used to say that increase in administered prices have a very important role to play in causing inflation, because government required money. But that continues to be an important factor even today. Next. Depreciation. Who can explain this? High import costs. Okay. What does depreciation mean? Let me make sure that all of you have understood. What does depreciation of the rupee means? Give me an example. If 78 rupees is equal to $1 and it goes up to 82 rupees is equal to $1, which it is today at present, right? In the market, you are not getting dollar for less than 84. I just now have to buy dollars, and unlike what was happening 3 months back, after the government has announced increase in TCS, tax collection at source from 5% to 20%. And after the government has announced 2000 rupee notes problem, and after it is announced that if you spend abroad, right, it will attract 20% TCS on your credit cards. Thank God there was a clarification that up to 7 lakhs, there will be no TCS, right? I am very sorry to say, policymakers don't realize what impact it has on the market. What people, what traders start, what money changers start doing. I remember when 2000 rupee note directive came, and you phoned a money changer, how much do I now pay for getting $1? Trust me or not, the price that was being quoted was 90 plus. I was being told, like my friends, sir, if you give it 2000 rupee note, it may be 95 rupees. Something which today is 84, you are reading in newspapers 82 something. But when you go to the market, right? So when rupee depreciates, on the face of it, it's good because exports increase. It's like saying against $1, an American was getting goods worth 78 rupees. Now he is getting goods worth 82 rupees. Good. But don't forget, our import costs go up. And what happens is, India, we normally say, is an import intensive country. Even for a large number of goods that you are exporting, you are first importing. You are exporting gems and jewelry, but you are first importing crude diamonds. So, rising import costs add to your inflationary pressures because it is all pervasive, right, throughout the manufacturing and production sector. Next. I think you know, yeah, because if prices globally are high, and if you are importing those commodities from abroad, obviously you are literally importing inflation from other countries. And that is very true. I'm sure you have read, European Central Bank has raised interest rates to 4%. Why? Because inflation is high. Europe, Eurozone, US, Britain, they are all suffering from high inflation. And one of the main reasons is rising gas prices because of Russia-Ukraine war. Next. I told you the other day how unscrupulous we are. Even life-saving medicines under COVID, oxygen cylinders, they were being hoarded. That means you have not bothered about the lives of the people. You can imagine if it can be done during that period. Imagine what is being done on a normal basis every day. We are, my dear, unfortunately confirmed hoarders, traditional hoarders. I would not be wrong to say hoarding is in our blood. And by hoarding, you are creating artificial shortages. And hoarding, picks up fast when inflationary pressures rise. Because traders want to take advantage of rising prices by creating artificial shortages and indulging in hoarding and black marketing. You will see when I take up measures to control inflation, at least 2 of them or 3 of them are aimed directly at preventing hoarding by the government of India. All right? Next. I told you, if you read what I gave you about implications of high fiscal deficit, one of the implications I have given is that it crowds out the private sector, which then has to fall back on, yes. That is one part of the story. The other part is high interest burden of the government means high cost. High cost means somewhere it has to recover. If you ask me, if I start analyzing why government has raised TCS now from 5% to 20%, it will be effective from 7th July. I know it because I had to travel, so I asked my travel agent that do I book now or do I book in July? I was told if you book in July, it's going to be 20% TCS, although I get it back, just as I get TDS back, right, when I file income tax return. My feeling is that they have raised TCS because this will give them extra money from taxation. And when you file your return next year, after March, financial year would be over. That much would be added to your revenue. You understand? Normally, if I file my return, other than the corporates who file their return quarterly, I file my return, a professional file the return mostly by May, June, right? Which means by that time, government would have already got money in its coffers, which will amount to, I am sure, many, many thousand crores of rupees. So these are cost push factors, very important. I would say in a country like India, you cannot deny, demand will always be rising. But it is always a mismatch between demand and supply, which is responsible for causing inflationary pressures. And that mismatch is predominantly because of supply shortages from time to time. All right? So these are demand pull and cost push factors. If you have any question, please ask me before we start explaining to you what are the measures adopted in India to tame inflation. Shall we start?
I read from you that cess and surcharges from 2010 to 11, it was around 10.4%, which increases in 2019 and 20 to 20%.
Exactly, I told you the same thing. You were not in the class. When I explained to you cesses and surcharges, I explained to you that when government took over in 2014, revenue from cesses and surcharges was just about 4 to 5% of the total tax revenue. This shot up to 20% at this is shot up to 20% at present. And I am sure I told you, revenue from cesses and surcharges is not to be shared with states. My dear, I ask you a very simple question. Please don't misunderstand. Government knows it very well, that hardly 2 or 3% of the total population knows what it is doing. And that 2 to 3% doesn't matter for elections. You understand? What matters is the masses who do not know what is happening. They are not concerned with TCS. They are not concerned with cesses and surcharges. They are paying and yet they don't know.
So, sir, if there is any limit of imposing cess and surcharges?
There is no limit. If you were talking of limit, then they should not have shot up from 4% to 20%. Right? There has been, I would say there has been a big spate of cesses and surcharges in the last 7-8 years. It began with Swachh Bharat cess, Krishi Kalyan cess, infrastructure cess, health and education cess, God knows how many cesses. All right?
The state has claimed like to share this cess and the surcharges.
That you will, there is no question how can under the constitution they are not shareable. They are not in the divisible pool. Anyway, so shall we proceed? We proceed to explain to you what are the measures adopted in India to control inflation. There are 3 types of policy measures. If I were to just give you a small chart, it will be like this. Monetary policy, fiscal policy, and supply management measures. Supply management measures. These are the most important. In India, the third one are the most important. I'll repeat. There are three types of measures adopted to control inflation. First, use of monetary policy. I'll dictate on each of them. Second, use of fiscal policy. And the third one, supply management measures. Let me tell you very clearly, while monetary and fiscal policies are important, the government predominantly relies upon the last set of measures. There are quite many, right? And quite a few of them are always given in the economic survey also. There is a box given every year. Shall we start? So we'll be very slow. Let's take a look at the monetary policy first. I'll first dictate, then I'll explain. The role of monetary policy. To control inflation. Is mainly by adopting a dear money policy by the RBI, DEAR, by adopting a dear money policy by the RBI. So underline the word dear money policy. By adopting a dear money policy by the RBI. Full stop. This policy implies that the RBI may raise a repo rate as well as cash reserve ratio full stop. At the same time, it may also conduct open market operations in order to absorb excess liquidity from the market. Full stop. Start a fresh para. Repo rate is that rate of interest at which RBI lends to commercial banks. Full stop. When repo rate is raised, comma, banks may raise their lending rates for borrowers due to which interest on borrowings goes up, resulting in a fall in demand. Full stop. Start a fresh para. Cash reserve ratio means that commercial banks have to keep a certain percentage of their total deposits with the RBI as a mandatory requirement at any given point of time. Full stop. When, as a mandatory requirement at any given point of time. Full stop. When cash reserve ratio is raised, we call it CRR. Cash reserve ratio is called CRR. When CRR is raised, comma, banks will have lesser funds. Banks will have lesser funds to lend. Resulting in lesser borrowings and lesser demand. Whatever you have written so far, please read. Any doubts? Are you clear about what is repo rate? Sure? You have already done? No. Then how are you clear? Which? What? I have not understood.
Newspapers of the Hindu or
Newspaper?
yes, sir.
Current?
Current affairs session that happens in the Sunday.
So,
So that
who does that?
Ravi sir and Prince
Ravi sir. So tell me, what is repo rate?
the rate is the rate at which RBI lends.
What is the full form of repo? Repurchase what? Repurchase options or obligations. Repurchase what? What? Government securities. Right? It lends against government securities with a promise to banks that I will repurchase these securities after a certain period of time. Right? So, repo rate is that rate of interest at which central bank of a country, in India the RBI of course, lends to commercial banks. And obviously, all of you know, which I'll dictate, that I think I told you verbally also that for 10 months together, January to October, retail inflation was hovering above 6%, which prompted the RBI to raise repo rate 5 times from July to October, raising it from 4% to 6.5%. And somewhere, if retail inflation is coming down now, right, to some extent, Shaktikant Das also takes credit that it is cost of funds would have gone up, borrowings and demand may have come down, so it might have played some part. That is why he has got Governor of the Year award. Right? I'll stop here. Die hard follower of Modi. Anyway, I am not using any other word. Anyway, so okay. Then what is cash reserve ratio? Yeah, a certain percentage of its total deposits. It's like saying that it was 4%. I think it was raised to 4.25%. That's the only change it made. It's like saying banks have 100 crores of deposits. Say, hypothetically. Let's say CRR is 4%. That means their capacity to lend is 96 crores. RBI raises it by 0.5%. So CRR becomes 4.5%. Banks' lending capacity is reduced to 95.5 crores. Let's not look at 95.9 crores or 5 crores. Let's look at lakhs and crores of deposits that banking system has. So 0.5% raise has a huge impact on the lending capacity and loanable funds of banks. All right? Then, there was a question in this prelims, if you recall, what do you understand? Which of the following would mean sterilization? It is open market operations. I am sure Professor Ravi would have also told you what are open market operations. Buying and selling of government securities by the RBI vis-a-vis banks. This is throughout the year. Sometimes RBI may sell securities to banks, sometimes it may buy securities. Let me ask you a question of common sense and see how common is the common sense. When RBI would like to sell government securities to banks? When it wants to absorb liquidity, when it feels that banks are having excess liquidity funds, right, and that they are lending indiscriminately, it may try to sell more. When will it try to buy? When it would like banks to lend more and more, right? So that when it buys, it gives them money. All right? So that's what you have written. Now, just end up by saying the RBI, please write, the RBI has raised repo rate from 4% to 6.5%, 5 times, from July to October 2022. July to January 2022, 22 and 23, in the backdrop of, I'll repeat, the RBI has raised repo rate 5 times, from 4 to 6.5%, in the backdrop of rising inflation, five times, between 4 to 6.5%. Time period is from July till January, isn't it? From July till January, July 2022 to January 2023. A few things you should write on your own also. All right, okay. Now write the last sentence. In the backdrop of rising inflation, I have already said. While monetary policy may be effective, in controlling inflation, comma, it has limitations. In the sense that it impacts only the demand side. It impacts only the demand side and has no role to play on the supply side. So this is a very important sentence that you have written. It is this sentence along with fiscal policy limitation which government knows. That is why it relies on the third set of measures. Now let's take a look. What is the role of fiscal policy to control inflation? Yes. SLR has no role to play. I'll tell you what. You have done SLR? You are asking this question because what is statutory liquidity ratio? It has no role to play. Let me tell you. Since you have asked the question, I am answering. India is the only country which is having SLR. 2. What is that statutory liquidity ratio? SLR, oh my dear, listen to me. SLR, statutory liquidity, that ratio of the total deposits of a bank which it has to keep with itself at any given point of time in the form of government securities. You know 2 purposes SLR serves. You have provoked me to answer this question. You know, SLR serves 2 purposes. One, it helps the government to get funds from banks. Because if SLR is 16%, I don't know, I am not doing monetary economics now. What is SLR? 16%? 18? 16. If it is 16%, that means 16% of their total funds they are keeping in the form of government securities. So government is getting money. The second reason, it may prevent what is called a run on the banks. Run on the banks means, supposing at any point of time there is a rumor that bank is failing. Do you know 2008? Oh my goodness, there was a wild rumor. ICICI Bank is failing. Right? Some of our friends abroad phoning us, ICICI Bank is failing. The largest private sector bank then, right? Remember one thing. Financial panic spreads much faster than fire. Fire will take months to reach from India to America. Financial panic, that bank is failing, it reached in seconds. So in such a situation, what happens? Bank should have sufficient liquidity, because very simple thing. I ask you a question of, you hear that ICICI Bank is failing. You will leave everything, your best of the jobs. You will first go to the counter of ICICI Bank to withdraw money. Say yes or no. There will be mile-long queues. Correct? Your turn comes at the counter. Bank says, sorry, we don't have funds, come tomorrow. That tomorrow will never come for the banks. You will go and spread in next IAS class in your locality and say, I went to ICICI Bank, they said come tomorrow. Oh my goodness. Those who were also sleeping, they will not sleep, they will go to bank. So there will be what is called a run on the banks. This is called a panic run on the banks. To prevent that panic run on the banks, this is SLR. No country has SLR. My dear, monetary economics was my special paper. I told you, 23 years I was teaching entire economics. Now I have taken sannyas. Only 3 topics. All right. So please write rule of fiscal. So don't provoke me. So please write fiscal policy. Please write the role of fiscal policy. The role of fiscal policy to control inflation is mainly by reducing, underline from here, by reducing the rates of indirect taxes. Like import duties, excise duties, as well as GST rates. Full stop. For example, when inflationary pressures pick up, comma, government may reduce import duties on import of such of the items due to which inflation rate may be going up. Full stop. In this regard, the government has in recent years brought down substantially import duties on edible oils and has also permitted zero duty imports for some varieties of pulses. Full stop. Also, it has in recent years brought down excise duties on certain items particularly on fuel in order to reduce the impact of rising fuel prices as they affect both production and distribution costs. Full stop. Other than reducing indirect taxes, comma, the government may also reduce its revenue expenditure because it does not create any assets. Full stop. Thus, even fiscal policy has a significant role to bring down commodity prices. In coordination with the monetary policy which impacts demand. Full stop. However, in a country like India, inflation is more often due to cost push factors causing supply shortages, from time to time. Full stop. As such, the government adopts a large number of supply management measures in order to correct a mismatch between demand and supply. Full stop. These measures are as follows. So now give the heading supply management measures. These measures are as follows. Number one. But remember one thing, we very rarely ask question on measures to control inflation in the mains. Listen to it carefully. But we can always ask, mention some of the supply management measures. Do you understand? Because economic survey highlights those measures. So number one, imposing a temporary ban on exports of some essential items in order to improve their domestic availability. Full stop. For example, same point. For example, in recent months, the government imposed a ban on exports of fill in the blanks and broken rice, not basmati. Basmati, very few people take in India. Recent months, government imposed a ban on export of wheat and broken rice. Do you know when it imposed a ban, there was criticism? Yes. Then government slightly moderated it. Number two, imposing stock limits on traders, wholesalers, and even millers, that is mills, even millers, for holding, not holding stocks of essential commodities. For holding stocks of essential commodities, as it has been done very recently in respect of wheat stocks, only 3 days back. But I'll tell you more also as we explain these points. Number 3, creating buffer stocks of pulses and onions so that these can be released in times of shortages. Four, entering into MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, with countries like Malawi and Mozambique. For regular supplies of some varieties of pulses. Next, imposing a temporary ban on futures trading in some essential commodities, as it has been done in recent years in respect of mustard oil. Next, imposing the provisions of ESMA, Essential Services Maintenance Act, Essential Services Maintenance Act, under which the government empowers itself with imposing a temporary ban on strikes in essential services such as those of transporters and truckers, as they usually threaten to go on strike in times of inflation, to have their demands met. Next, expansion of the public distribution system PDS by involving state level agencies as well as the NAFED, NAFED, as well as the NAFED. Full form of NAFED is National Cooperative Marketing Federation, as well as the NAFED for door-to-door distribution of essential commodities to insulate, don't try to insult, to insulate vulnerable sections. Next, issuing directives to states to impose heavy penalties on traders indulging in hoarding. Next, you can be asked a question on the next one. Launching start an inverted comma. Operation Green, close inverted comma. In respect of perishable commodities. Under which as many as 41 perishable commodities. Are transported by Kisan Rail from high production and surplus regions to high consumption and deficient regions. And deficient regions, not surplus but deficient. Okay, read. You may have questions to ask me. I told you there are quite many. I am sure you will have some questions to ask. Otherwise, I will ask. I know you will ask. But there is somebody sitting there who can answer that question. They are non-economic student. Please read and put your question marks. GSTN? Zero GSTN? No, uh, you are talking about one of the points I gave you in 23 points, isn't it? Export shall be zero rated. I have explained that. I'll come to that, don't worry. I'll explain that. I think I've explained most of the points except a few. So I thought maybe you have questions to ask. Okay. Shall we start from point number 1? First is very clear. Yeah.
Sir, in the fiscal policy, we are saying that the government is reducing the rates of the direct taxes to bring down the cost. So, won't it,
Because indirect taxes are commodity taxes.
in that case, won't it increase the demand?
No. It is only during inflation that it does. For example, when I said that as a result of rising oil prices, both production and distribution costs go up. So it may reduce, right? Then edible oils. India is one of the 65% of its consumption it imports, right? Today's newspaper says palm oil imports have come down by 14%, but sunflower oil imports have drastically gone up. And India imports palm oil from Indonesia, one of the major countries, which at one point of time even refused to, right? So in a situation where edible oil prices are soaring because of high import duties, right? It will bring down, it has done so. Okay? Coming to the point where you have written stock limits. 1955, an act came in India when India was a country of shortages. This act was called Essential Commodities Act. Will you believe more than 50 commodities were then placed under this act, whose movement, storage, distribution, etc. were to be controlled by the government. Since that time India was a shortage economy, this act came. From 55 till date, the number of commodities included in this act has been drastically reduced, because India is no longer that kind of a shortage economy. Yet you have commodities, some of the essential commodities like wheat, etc., which are still in this act. So what the government has done is impose stock limits under the Essential Commodities Act, so that although, if you have read newspapers 3 days back, although government expects a bumper crop of wheat this time, yet prices of wheat have gone up by 9%. So it decided to impose this measure. Then you have written ESMA. 3.5 years back, Yogi government imposed ESMA on school teachers, because this is an act which empowers the government, both state governments also, to impose a temporary ban on strikes. Delhi government, Kejriwal government imposed ESMA on traders, on truckers and transporters, because a large chunk of vegetables, fruits, other commodities come from Haryana and neighboring states. And normally what happens is, when prices are going up, these people, truckers and transporters, in order to have their demands met by the government, they threaten to go on strike. So government is empowered to impose a temporary ban on strikes. Then you have written a point, futures trading. Who can explain this? What exactly is futures trading? Buying and selling of a commodity at a contract. Detail. Give me details. My dear, government kept this mustard oil futures trading on, up to 31st March 2023. Now, it may have extended. What is futures trading? Listen to this very carefully. It's a contract between a buyer and a seller to buy or sell tons of commodities. It's not a retailer kind of a thing. A big trader of, let's say, mustard oil may enter into a contract with another trader to buy a certain huge quantum of mustard oil. Right? This is a contract. Under the contract, the delivery will come, say, within a month. This contract is entered into at a fixed price. Now I ask you a question. Why should government step in and impose a temporary ban on futures trading in certain essential commodities? Because it has inherent speculation. Why does this mustard oil trader, where is the need for him to enter into such a big contract? Because he expects the prices to go up. So at any point of time, this has inherent speculative element. And any speculation can lead to inflation. So I remember 2013, Sharad Pawar was agriculture minister. As agriculture minister, he imposed temporary ban on futures trading in some essential commodities, which are potatoes and a few others, right? This came for criticism by some people that, oh, would it really help bring down prices? My dear friends, remember one thing. It's not one measure to control prices. No country in the world would adopt one measure. It would have a set of measures. Some of them may be more effective than others. So futures trading is one of those measures, along with, say, imposing stock limits, imposing a temporary ban, because government has imposed a temporary ban on export of broken rice. All right? Because broken rice is used by masses. Then some of the points you may have written, just see which are the other points which you may feel. Sorry? Yeah, normally you have stocks of wheat and rice, but government has started creating stocks of onions and pulses also. MOU. This is with actually Malawi, Mozambique. These are countries with which, and of course Myanmar. There are 3 countries with which government has entered already into a MOU for a certain 5-year period, so that it ensures regular supplies of some varieties of pulses. But then what is Operation Green? 2018, this was launched. I'm sure you like to note something about this. Please write. This operation was launched in 2018. In fact, November 2018. Full stop. To begin with, it covered only 3 perishable commodities. That is tea, tomatoes, onion and potatoes. And subsequently extended to as many as 41 perishable commodities. Subsequently, from 3, the number of commodities covered under the program was raised to as many as 41, which is at present. Full stop. Kisan Rail was specially introduced in the year 2020 for transporting these perishable commodities from high production regions to high consumption regions. You understand? High production to high consumption regions. As well as from surplus regions to deficient regions. Simple as that. Well, that's a complete thing now. Started with 3, presently 41. The mechanism of Kisan Rail was introduced in 2020, not 18 itself. All right? So these are measures. But one last thing, on which question has also already been asked year before last in the prelims, and I was very happy because we had done it in the class. There have been times in India when government, in order to protect senior citizens and of course some vulnerable sections, it may come out with some category of bonds at a time when inflation is high. Have I made myself clear? I said we are now going to discuss with you something very interesting, on which question has already come in the prelims, and as I said, since we had done it in the class, I was very happy the question came. The question was, I'm going to ask you, the question is, what are inflation index bonds? Where is that non-economic student? Yes.
Sir, in this type of bond, the return is given as per adjusted to the inflation. Interest is given,
Huh?
interest rate is given as per the inflation rate.
This boy is very intelligent. You are going to qualify civil services. Take it from me. If you don't, I shall take further sannyas. Add-on sannyas. Now, don't write anything, first listen. 2013, in India, such bonds were issued. These were called inflation index bonds, because rate of inflation was going high. So these are bonds on which the government offers a rate of interest which may be higher than the prevailing rate of inflation. Which inflation? Retail inflation, CPI. For example, 2013, when these bonds were introduced, they offered a rate of interest which shall be 1.5% higher than the prevailing rate of inflation. For example, if inflation inched up to 7%, these bonds would offer 8.5%. When it will come down, the difference would be 1.5% over and above the prevailing rate of inflation. Now I ask you a question. Who is benefiting? Obviously senior citizens who mostly depend on their interest income once they retire to run their homes. And of course, predominantly it is meant for that category. So these are bonds which also, protect savings of the people. So these are called, the question, as I said, question came year before last in the prelims. So I would like to dictate this to you. Please write inflation index bonds. Inflation index bonds may also be issued by the government at a time when the CPI rate of inflation may have a tendency to rise so that such bonds may protect savings of the people, particularly senior citizens. Full stop. In 2013, inflation index bonds were issued by the government which offered a rate of interest which would be 1.5% higher than the prevailing rate of inflation based on CPI. Have I made myself clear? So you should know that at any point of time, such bonds may be floated by the government. So that takes care, as I said, while government may use monetary and fiscal policy, which it will, any government will do. But in India, it is supply management measures which are very, very, most important in terms of managing the supply and correcting a mismatch between demand and supply. Because you cannot deny that while demand may always be going up in India due to rising incomes, rising population, there may be problems in terms of supply. So, to balance demand and supply, such measures come very handy to the government. Okay? So, we are through with this. Now, you will tell me the next subhead. I gave you subheads. Inflation, oh, very important. Inflation targeting. So what we are doing is, we are first defining what is inflation targeting. We'll first define. Please write. Inflation targeting means that the central bank of a country targets a certain rate of inflation so that it uses its monetary policy to ensure that it is able to keep the rate of the annual rate of inflation in the country, the annual rate of inflation in the country within that target. Full stop. New Zealand was the first country to adopt inflation targeting by its central bank. In 1989. Full stop. Start a fresh para now. Now we are talking about India. In India, a committee was set up in 2015, headed by Deputy Governor RBI Urjit Patel, to recommend inflation targeting by the RBI. full stop. On the recommendations of this committee, comma, a monetary policy committee, a six-member monetary policy committee, a six-member monetary policy committee was set up and entrusted the task of inflation targeting by the RBI from the year 2016 full stop. Accordingly, since 2016, the RBI is mandated to keep annual average rate of CPI inflation up to 4% with the flexibility of 2% plus or minus. Full stop. This implies that the maximum rate of CPI inflation can be up to 6%. And if it goes beyond 6%, continuously for more than 6 months, the RBI is answerable to the government. Full stop. Under the RBI Act 1934, put a dash, section 45 ZN, section 45 ZN of the Act the RBI has to submit a report to the Government of India. Submit a report to the Government of India indicating reasons for rate of inflation above 6%? Comma, measures that it proposes to adopt to bring down inflation and approximate time by which inflation can be brought down. Full stop. This report had to be submitted by the Governor RBI as CPI rate of inflation remained above 6% for as many as 10 months. Okay? This is a confidential report, right? Obviously, one of the major reasons because there was a leak of the major reasons that RBI mentioned was Russia-Ukraine war also. Because January to October, I said, rate of CPI inflation was above 6%. And if it goes above 6% for more than 6 months, it is RBI is legally mandated under Section 45ZN of the RBI Act. All right? So, now listen. To make things very simple, most countries may have a single rate of inflation as a target. America has 2%. Inflation targeting 2%, not a range. We have a range. 4% with 2% plus or. Most countries don't have a range. Most countries have a fixed rate. America has 2%. There is hue and cry if rate of inflation in America goes above 2%, which it went. You know, it even touched 8%. So, now there have been questions, there are being questions that are being asked by experts. Why should the central bank be burdened with this objective? Why should it not focus on growth? You understand? Because high growth may itself take care of inflation. So often there is what is called a debate between inflation and growth. And it is often said whether there is a trade-off between inflation and growth. Is it that you have to choose either inflation or growth? One of the most, shall I say, well-known bureaucrats plus economists, everybody knows about him, N.K. Singh, 15th Finance Commission Chairman, and even that new FRBM Review Act, right? Other than him, we have, I want to tell you something very interesting, that for 9 years now you have NDA government. But for a large part of the economy from 51 to till this government came, for many years we had an economist who is still living and still vocal, right? Rangarajan. C. Rangarajan. There is hardly any committee in India on different sectors which has not been headed by Rangarajan. He was also governor RBI. There used to be a joke about him that whenever government would be in trouble, instead of saying, "Oh God, where are you?" it will say, "Oh Ranga, where are you?" You understand? Astute economist, excellent economist. His thoughts, I said, there is no committee, be it on poverty elevation, be it employment generation, be it on plan, non-plan. Talk of any committee in India, it must be headed by Rangarajan. So he has a very wonderful thing to say. He says, let's not bother about high rate of inflation. Right? He says growth is a marathon. Inflation would create small hiccups here and there. Right? It will settle down over a period of time. But let's not, give up the target and the objective of attaining high growth. So I would say there isn't a better explanation than going by his words that every central bank in every country in the world, in fact, central bank always works in coordination with the Ministry of Finance, even in India. So it should take inflation in its stride and push for higher growth, because growth is a marathon, and over a period of time it will take care of inflation itself, right? So I thought it was important for me to mention in a general way that while inflation targeting has been adopted by quite a few countries as a major objective of the RBI's or central bank's monetary policy, now gradually some countries are realizing that let's not stick to this as a principal objective. All right? So I feel this is at any given point of time an important question because this has been in the news in terms of the role of the RBI. And I am not surprised that if Shaktikant Das has been given the award of Governor of the Year, it must be because A, he is very loyal to the government, undoubtedly, right? You have to be a yes man, remember. It's a fact. I mean, it's a proven fact, right? Otherwise you are out. And secondly, I would say he has handled things little better. For example, 6th to 8th of June was the MPC meeting. It meets bi-monthly, once in 2 months. Just think about it. RBI decided to have a pause on increasing repo rate. Right? It came in newspapers. I can't believe that on the 8th, when meeting concluded, RBI didn't have a word with NSO. You understand what I'm saying? To have a feel what is going to be the rate of inflation. Do you think NSO had compiled the figure on the 10th or 11th itself? 10th, 11th was Saturday and Sunday. NSO is closed. You understand what I'm saying? So the meeting was very carefully planned between 6th and it met for 3 days. And when it concluded on the 8th of June, RBI said, I am having a pause on any rate hikes. He already would have spoken to somebody in the NSO that inflation is coming down or going up. So you understand what I have said? Inflation has come down from 4.7% in April to 4.25% in 4.5% in May. So inflation targeting means adopting this target as a certain target to be as the annual average rate of inflation. So imagine that if it is above 6%, average rate of inflation goes above 6%. Okay? So the next subhead. Phillips curve, A.W. Phillips. How come everywhere New Zealand comes into the picture? This man is A.W. Phillips, an engineer from New Zealand, who was teaching in London School of Economics also. Phillips curve. So please write. This curve explains correlation. This curve explains correlation between the rate of inflation in an economy I'll repeat the sentence. This curve explains correlation between the rate of inflation in an economy and the rate of unemployment in an economy. Rate of inflation in an economy and the rate of unemployment in an economy. So which are the two variables? Inflation and unemployment. Full stop. According to this curve, there is an inverse relationship between the two. There is an inverse relationship between the two. In the sense that at high rate of inflation, there may be low rate of unemployment. And at low rate of inflation, there may be high rate of unemployment. Full stop. The curve is downward sloping from left to right. Here you measure rate of inflation and here you measure rate of unemployment. Demand curve is downward sloping. The inverse relationship between price and demand. If rate of inflation is OI, rate of unemployment shall be OU. If rate of inflation falls to OI1, rate of unemployment rises to OU1. If rate of inflation falls further to OI2, rate of unemployment rises to OU2. Any doubts? Any inverse relationship is shown with the help of downward sloping curve from left to right. Wait patiently. मैं हूं ना. But now I am going to ask you, why this happens?
The supply of money in the market rises.
As inflation rises,
The supply of money in the market rises, which from the pocket of the producer. Like he can like recruit more workers in their firm to produce more. As in, at the same time, when the inflation goes down, the producer money to hold to run the business goes down. Like he cannot have as many workers as he was having before because there is inflation in the market. So like he will write off.
now when you say inflation rises, supply of money rises.
As in supply of money, the purchasing power of the obviously
Rises. How? With inflation, purchasing power falls.
sir, if there is high money supply in the market, obviously inflation
Huh? Rise in wage rate. Okay. Sorry, if inflation, high inflation means high wage rate. So high wage rate means, but here it says low.
when there is inflation in the market, the demand of
There is a genius who is going to explain. Yes. So, let me tell you, you as general studies student should not bother. You understand what I am saying? You are not supposed, you will never be asked a question, analyze this. Optional, of course, critically evaluate Phillips curve hypothesis. You can be asked. Now, what was this man trying to tell us? He was trying to tell us two things. A, that there may be a positive correlation between inflation and growth. Right? How? I ask you a question. Given a choice between inflation and deflation, an economy would prefer what? Why? Moderate rate of inflation, not very high. Because inflation, no, it has built-in incentive for producers to produce more. At the same time, up to a certain rate of inflation, it doesn't hurt demand. Beyond a certain rate of inflation, it hurts both demand and supply. Because beyond a certain rate of inflation, producers are not able to pass on that high cost to consumers. So, he was trying to tell us, A, that there is always a positive correlation between inflation and growth. So, high rate of inflation means high growth, which means producers will employ more workers. The second thing is, at high rate of inflation, will you like to remain unemployed or will you like to get some job or the other? Obviously, right? So, be it at a lower wage rate, correct? So that is why critics say that this correlation may at best be valid in the short run. Over a medium and long period, if you are a PhD and getting a job below your PhD qualification, how long can you sustain in that job? So critics say that over a period of time, employment will come back to its natural level. So this curve, at your general studies level, you should know A, the variables. Sometimes you may ask a question, Phillips curve explains, you are given a multiple choice. B, we always talk when we talk of this curve, we always say that the advocate of this curve was actually trying to tell us that there was a positive correlation between high rate of inflation and high growth up to a certain point. All right? So that is the explanation given by A.W. Phillips. But as I said, as a I mean, if you analyze as an optional student, you have to mention. I told you economics dictionary gives this explanation of this curve, saying that how far you can say at what rate of inflation unemployment is going to fall or rise. All right. So you should know that the curve has downward sloping behavior, and two, that basically at your level you should be able to explain even as a short question that Phillips curve explains correlation between two variables. You are not supposed to analyze then whether it's a short-term relationship valid or long-term. All right. So this brings us to a close of this small subhead. I thought you must do, because sometimes they are asked, what is Phillips curve? A very short question. Now, what is the next one, subhead? No, don't say as any. This would depend from situation to situation. Don't say any country. Point is, there may be situations where at high rate of inflation, unemployment may be low, because that rate of inflation may be sustainable rate of inflation. That's precisely what I was saying. It can happen even in India, because when it comes to producers, for them inflation incentivizes growth. That is what we say. Don't say any country, you would say situation. It can happen in India, it can happen in any country. But then it may not be a normal situation. He was pointing it out as a normal situation. That any point of time, at high rate of inflation, there may be low rate of unemployment. That is what I said. Critics say that this may be valid only in the short period. Okay? What is the next subhead? Tell me. Sorry? Various concepts. There are quite many. I'll first take up very simple ones. Which are those two simple ones? Disinflation and deflation. Disinflation and deflation. So I'm going to ask you, what is disinflation? Sorry? No, when rate of inflation is falling, it is called disinflation. When it falls below zero, it is called deflation. Please write. Disinflation means a situation characterized by a falling rate of inflation over a period. A falling rate of inflation over a period. Say from 6% to 5% to 3% and so on. Full stop. When it goes below zero, and becomes negative, it is called deflation. Full stop. In India, the WPI is recorded in the negative territory in May at minus. Yes, it's always better to quote the conditions in India, right? at minus 3.48%. It's minus 3.5, 48 rounded off to point, isn't it? Minus 3.5, isn't it? 48. Minus 3.48. Okay, so that is disinflation and deflation. Correct? Let's take a look what is reflation. Now, before I explain what is reflation, let me tell you, this is a very, very, this is very topical. I mean, this is what has happened. This is what has been done by most countries after the pandemic, or I would say during the pandemic. Before I dictate, reflation actually means revival of the economy from slowdown oblique recession by deliberately adopting two sets of packages. It is called, these are called fiscal stimulus package and monetary stimulus package. Every economy in the world adopted these packages to revive and kickstart their economies, which went into slowdown and recession. So the term reflation means reviving the economies. So please write. Reflation is a deliberate policy to revive the economy by the government by increasing aggregate demand full stop. This is done by the government by adopting, underline from here, by adopting fiscal stimulus package as well as monetary stimulus package. Full stop. Fiscal stimulus package implies that on the one hand, the government may reduce tax rates, the government may reduce tax rates, and on the other, increase its expenditure. Particularly capital expenditure. To generate incomes and demands. Full stop. Monetary stimulus package implies that the central bank of the country may reduce interest rates on the one hand, and increase money supply on the other. To increase demand. Full stop. Every economy in the world, adopted these packages. To fight the pandemic, which had caused slowdown and recession. My dear, I think you know, I think for 3 years together, Federal Reserve Bank of the United States kept interest rate zero. RBI, it is now that it has stopped. Otherwise, it was pumping credit and money into the economy, keeping interest rates low. So, fiscal stimulus package means you are stimulating the economy on the one hand by reducing tax rates and increasing expenditure. And monetary stimulus package means rate of interest are kept low and more credit and money supply is given to boost demand. Because the biggest casualty in a situation like the pandemic was fall in demand. Once you try and revive demand, automatically produce because commodities are demanded. Ultimately we always say, consumption is the be and all end of all economic activity. It's a fact. Everything ends at consumption. So whatever are the next ones, we'll take up in our last class. And my request is, come prepared with whatever doubts you may have on any of the 3 topics that we have done so far. All right? When we meet next on Monday. Tomorrow there is a function, all facilitation of those. I don't know, every institute is saying we have 600 candidates. How